Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by, and welcome to the Essential Sales Skills for Recruiters webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, you may do so by using the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screens. If you need to reach an operator and are participating over the phone, you may do so by pressing *0. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded today, Wednesday, August 28, 2013. I would now like to turn the conference over to Erin Jacobson. Please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you all for joining today's webinar, Essential Sales Skills for Recruiters. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. By the end of the day tomorrow, you will receive an email from us which will include today's webinar, slides, recording, and information containing HRCI credits. This information will also be available at ere.net. We have had an overwhelming response on this topic, but before we get to it, I would like to say a quick thank you to Jobvite for sponsoring today's webinar. I would like to introduce Katie from Jobvite, who would like to take a few minutes of your time before we kick this off.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Williams. I'm the Marketing Programs Manager at Jobvite, and I just want to give you a quick overview of who Jobvite is and what we do. So Jobvite is a best-in-breed recruiting automation platform, which means we really only focus on recruiting and provide many different solutions and tools for the recruiting function. And some of the tools that we do offer are social, open web sourcing and search. We help you build and manage your talent pool while also making it easy for you to collaborate with teammates and with coworkers. And we have incredible campaign management and job marketing functionality and offer full social referral tracking. So basically, Jobvite will take you all the way through the hiring process from deep applicant tracking, workflow management, dynamic interview scheduling, and company branding with hosted career websites. So here are some of our customers, and we power many of the who's who in corporate hiring and talent pool sourcing and cater to all industries from high tech to energy all the way to healthcare, and also spend a lot of time with our customers like Twitter, Zappos, LinkedIn, MuleSoft, and many more to drive our products to be all that they are. So thank you so much for letting Jobvite be a part of the webinar today, and we really hope you enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Katie. We are very lucky to have Nancy Parks and Dinah Matlock speaking today. Nancy is the founder and Dinah is a consultant and trainer of HR Partners Plus, a training and consulting practice specializing in sales skills training for recruiters. Welcome, Nancy and Dinah. I'll turn this over to you now.
Well, thank you. And by the way, thanks to Jobvite and to ERE. We're delighted to be a part of this webinar today. And my name is Nancy Parks, and
I'm Dinah Matlock,
and we'll be your tour guides for today. So let's get started. I don't want to take any more time than we need to with too much of an intro, but we do want to begin today's session with the end in mind. So what we want to do is provide you with the basics of a buying process and how to align your recruiting process with how your prospects and candidates make buying decisions. We also want to talk about 3 critical sales skills that we know now are linked to recruiting success. Some very exciting work there. And then, not to be too negative, but we also want to share a little bit about what we've seen as the biggest mistake that recruiters make when it comes to selling skills, and certainly a little bit on how to avoid that biggest mistake so we just don't leave you hanging. Now, I know what you may be thinking at this point, that sales, all right, the first word that, we do this in training a lot of times. What's the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word sales? And unfortunately, it can often be kind of negative. In fact, maybe for some of you, you have an image like this guy up here. And actually, to be honest with you, there's some good reasons for that. In the old days, selling, frankly, was all about an information imbalance. That is, the seller had a ton of information. The buyer was at the mercy of the seller. And because of that, people felt pushed or felt like they were subject to cheesy closes and all the old school stuff that we've heard about. The good news is there's some great research out there now that looks at the new way to sell. And we're basing some of today on a great book by Daniel Pink called To Sell is Human. My friends, 1 in 9 workers actually make their living by trying to get others to buy something or purchase something. But what about the other 8 in 9? We're all in what Daniel Pink calls non-sales selling. We love that term. We think it's a great descriptor for those of us who don't really think of ourselves as that cheesy guy on the previous slide, but recognizing that there is a significant portion of our day that is spent persuading, convincing, maybe influencing someone else to give up something in exchange for what we have. Now, it may be a product, it may be a service, and in recruiting, it may be your candidate. It may be an idea that you're trying to get across to that other person, and they have to give up something, either their way of thinking or their idea or their point of view, whatever it is. Interestingly enough, too, Daniel Pink says that we devote about 40% of our time on the job to what he calls moving others. So if we have some statisticians on the line today, that's about 24 minutes out of every hour that we're actually doing non-sales selling. So it's in that context that we want to talk about today's presentation. So let's be honest. Up front, I want to let you know that Dinah and I are huge proponents of a generic buying process. This is the framework for the training today. If you don't have a consistent, successful, repeatable process when it comes to engaging with your prospects and candidates, then statistically speaking, you're not in a good position to succeed. Let me give you some statistics. In sales, those who use a consistent, successful, repeatable sales process outdistance their peers in quota achievement by 25%. Their win rate is 20% higher than their peers, and check this out, they're 5 times less likely to end up just discounting products to try and make a sale. So let's flip that around. Having a consistent, successful, repeatable process is key to helping you as a recruiter gain a key competitive advantage with the folks in your space. Now, what we want to try to do today is, if you don't have a great sales playbook that matches your recruiting playbook, we want to start off with just a generic one that we're hoping may give you some place to go. What we like to start with, and we do this quite a bit in our training, is what we call a generic buying process, and you'll see it up there. If you strip away everything, let's just say, I don't care if you just bought a new yacht, a new home, or just bought a tube of toothpaste down the street, it begins with a recognition of a need. So a generic buying process always starts with some type of need or problem that the person's trying to solve, okay? Not rocket science here. Once you identify a problem, you conduct your search. You evaluate your options. You check out what are the risks, and at some point you're going to make a decision. So if you don't already have a great, successful, repeatable process, try using this generic buying process. Now we're going to showcase this a little bit for you today and see if it might give you some ideas on how to help you structure the calls. But again, we're great proponents of this because without some type of a standard way to approach your candidates or prospects, frankly, you're just going to be winging it. Now, let's take a look at what winging it might even look like. And this is one of the things that we see. I'm sorry to say we work with some super recruiters, but one of the main things we see recruiters doing is they're frankly out of alignment. They're not in tune or aligned with how their prospects and candidates are going to make a decision. And it's an easy thing to fix, but sometimes it's not such an obvious thing to recognize. So, Dinah and I are going to try. Now, this is going to be a little role play here. So I'm going to have Dinah is my victim. Oh, no, excuse me. Dinah is my prospect. And we're going to do just a quick role play. I want to see if you can hear what happens on this call, because what we're going to try and demonstrate is what we call lack of alignment. Okay. Hey, Dinah, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good. This is Nancy. I'm a recruiter over at ABC, and I got to tell you, we've got some incredible positions that are coming available really soon here. And I think you would be a great fit.
You know, Nancy, I really, I'm sorry to just stop you, but I am so busy today. It is a really hectic morning here, and it's just not a good time for us to talk.
Oh, I understand. I don't want to waste your time. Quickly, before we go, Dinah, is there anyone else that you know of who might be looking for a position right now?
Well, I can't think of anyone at the moment, but I'll certainly keep you in mind.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Dinah. Bye. Okay. All right. Very good. So hopefully what you heard was we're trying to demonstrate extreme lack of alignment. Okay? Remember, that person has to have a need or problem before they're going to even entertain or evaluate their options and risks. And as a seller or recruiter, what I did was I did what we used to call in sales the show up and throw up, where you just share a job opening and you just toss the line out and see if you get anybody on the hook. Well, Dinah's not going to stand for that. She's a busy lady. And yeah, I could have said, well, what's a better time? But the point is I was all about my agenda. I need to know right now because that hiring manager is breathing down my neck. I've got to get this job opening. And by the way, if Dinah's not interested, does she know someone who is? What we're saying is it's a classic way to be out of alignment. And we understand that there's great reasons for that. I mean, the recruiters are under tremendous pressure from within their own organizations and from hiring managers. I mean, we get that. But, oh, my gosh, this is just a classic way that we can actually start off in a one-down position. And you know what? You just became a commodity. Not only are you out of alignment by doing this, you just jeopardized any opportunity for a relationship, and you sound like everybody else, just hawking a product or selling something to somebody. And with commodities, once you become a commodity, the only thing that you can do is talk about price. So there's the first lesson. Remember, if you're out of alignment, if you don't have a process, get in alignment and understand without this, about the only place you can go is we're going to soon, very quickly, be talking about price. Now, so the good news is, with alignment, you can see what happens here. If you resist the itch to pitch, as we say, now, the same process on the top there, that prospect or candidate is going to have a need or problem. That's where we're going to start. Then they're going to evaluate the options and risks and decide. As a seller or as a recruiter then, we start by finding out what's important, identifying those needs, clarifying the needs. And in our training, we spend quite a bit of time helping people get some tools that help them quickly identify, define, and clarify needs. That's the go-to place to begin with because that's where your prospect or candidate is. Now, once you do that, now you're in a much better position to talk about the job or the position or the career opportunity, whatever it is, because you have a frame of reference. The frame of reference is those pain points. And once you do that, of course, then you're up and running, and you certainly can address the competitors, ensure you have commitment, et cetera. So my point is, I think you can probably say it pretty obviously, remember, if you don't have some way of giving in your mind a little roadmap, try this, because one of the good things to remember is that in a successful process, the buying and selling are mirror images of one another. And don't forget, it's the candidate or prospect's perspective that is the most important. They have a series of steps that they have to go through to identify and fulfill and clarify their needs. And the recruiter's job as the seller is to satisfy those needs each step in the process. In other words, it almost becomes like kind of a cool little dance, where it's an absolute mirror image here, where two people are totally in sync. Now, let's drill down a little bit further. The foundational skills in a successful sales process. Now, this means one of the things that we found in the research that we've done with recruiters, and this has been really pretty exciting for us, is that we started off doing a pilot project a number of years ago with a number of different sales skills, and we've been able to whittle that down to 3 key selling skills that we know now are highly correlated with recruiting success. And we want to talk about those right away here. So the first one is questioning and listening. Questioning and listening. We call them 2 sides to the same coin. And I've got some diagnostics. While I'm yakking here, you can look at what we have up on the screen. It's almost like you move the gears. You ask great questions and you listen. You ask great questions and you listen. And I think the temptation for so many people is to just go into transmit. I mean, I hate to say it, but so often, and even on candidate screens, in fact, especially on candidate screens, we hear so many recruiters in total transmit. It's about me, I, my job, my needs, right now, what can you do for me? And, oh my gosh, the poor candidate or prospect becomes sort of like an innocent bystander. And so the first thing that we try to do, and we do a lot of work with this in our training, is helping people get some great questions and helping them develop some listening skills. I can't emphasize enough how important that listening skill is. Now, I don't know, Donna, maybe this is a good place to talk about that one recruiter that we worked with a while back.
Sure, Nancy. We actually worked with a recruiter that was really, really focused on asking certain questions. They were always the same questions, and she wanted to get the information that she thought she needed, and she felt like her questions were always a little bit out of order, that she kind of fumbled through her candidate phone screens, and things were not sequenced correctly for her, so she was getting really frustrated. You know, what she was really saying was, I'm out of alignment with that candidate that I'm talking with. So she kept working on it, and we were actually doing a call recording on one of her calls, and she got really frustrated. I could hear it on the call. She finally, all of a sudden, the call just changed, and she was listening to the customer, or the candidate, and what she said was, I just turned my chair around from my PC, I shut my eyes, and I really listened to what that candidate was saying. And then I asked appropriate questions to follow up and really clarify what that candidate wanted in a position. And this recruiter was so excited when she called me back and we talked. She said, I finally get it. I have to really be in tune and listen to that customer or that candidate. I have to be in alignment, and I have to ask the appropriate questions to really understand the needs. So that's just one example of a recruiter that finally, after they really, really listened, understood how that could really enhance their candidate phone screens.
Absolutely. I forgot about that. That's right. That's a great example. And again, I'm not saying that everybody now needs to step away from the PC, turn your back to your screen like this particular recruiter did, but frankly, maybe some people do. I mean, we've even heard it on calls where the emails are flying in while the recruiter is talking to a candidate or prospect. Oh my gosh, how can you be listening when that's happening? And listening is the key skill here. So thanks for sharing that, Dinah. Again, the first thing you have to do is at least have some awareness. Now, in our training, we do quite a bit working with some specific listening skills and techniques, but even if you don't do that, the first thing that we would really recommend you doing is just become aware of your listening. I mean, that is, if you get nothing else out of the whole thing today, become aware of your listening. Now, let's look at questioning. Now, there are two types of questions that are foundational to your success. One is the situation fact question. Now, these are really important. They help you understand the current situation, how long they've been in their current role, what shift they might be working, if you have to have special licenses, etc. But look at the second bullet here. Understand, my friends, be careful that you don't ask too many situation fact questions, because research has shown inexperienced salespeople, and by the way, inexperienced recruiters we've worked with, frankly just ask way too many situation fact questions. They're burning their time with situation fact questions when sometimes you can even just do your homework in advance, for heaven's sakes. And while you're asking those situation fact questions, by the way, what value are you adding for that prospect or candidate? I would argue very, very little. Now, we do notice that when we work with recruiters, they have a tendency to ask way too many situation fact questions, especially on those candidate screens. And we understand that. Some of those have to be asked. We're just saying, let's put up the yellow caution light. If you have not done a physical inventory of your questions, that's a great place to start. So that would be our first thing, is just watch out for the situation fact questions and keep them to a minimum. I don't know, Dinah, maybe this would be a good place to share our friend out in California who had an interesting lesson.
Sure. this was a recruiter that we worked with, and we really had a lot of fun with this person. He actually thought he had great questioning skills, and he even said, I listen really well, and I really get a lot of information from my potential candidates. And what we did is we actually did a call recording of one of his candidate phone screens, and we sent it to him afterwards and said, please listen to this and, give us your feedback. What do you think went well? What do you think you may need improvement on? Wanted to have a discussion around it. The next day, Nancy and I both got an email from this individual saying, I have a new name now, and my name is the Fact-Finding Fool. He counted over 50 fact-finding questions in less than a 20-minute period. And he said, I had no idea how I just blast the candidate with one question right after other. Do you have this? Is this that? Do you have that? So forth. And he said, and you know what? I didn't listen to a thing that candidate said. So it was really an eye-opening experience, and for him to really look at the questions that he was asking on his candidate screens and to really think about, am I listening?
Excellent. Yeah. And now we're not saying that everybody out there is a fact-finding fool, but perhaps we've all been guilty of being fact-finding fools at some point. So it begs the question, if I'm not asking situation fact questions, what should I be doing? I'm glad you asked. It's the problem pain questions. These are the ones that help you get totally aligned with your prospect or candidate. If you do nothing but kick up your game today with some listening skills and be conscious of the kinds of questions you're asking, you're going to walk away a much better recruiter, and that candidate experience will be better. So the problem pain questions are about the key job satisfiers, the motivators, what's of value to that other person. These are the ones that are going to help you get aligned with your prospect or candidate. Because remember, like the little cheesy graphic I have up there in the corner, they start with pain. It all starts with pain. Remember, no pain, no change. It starts with pain. You've got to get on the same page with them and find out what are the key drivers. These problem pain questions, my friends, are highly correlated with sales and recruiting success. So if you haven't taken a look at your pain questions lately, I would strongly encourage you to do that. Now, in our training, we have quite a few that we provide, but at the same time, there's still some good ones that people use. I mean, you might have some of your standard who, what, why, where, whens that help you understand why the person's applying for the position or why this company, whatever. But let's give you a couple tips, too. This might help you or get the juices flowing. Not that these are the best pain questions in the world, but this might help you. Sometimes, to differentiate yourself from your competitors, instead of just asking a generic, well, so tell me, what are your key job satisfiers or whatever? Instead of asking that, do a little bit of homework and then come off a little bit more like an expert. Maybe your question could sound like this. One of the common concerns that I hear is that people with your experience and credentials can often be frustrated by lack of growth opportunities. And I'm just curious to know, is that the case for you? That's a pain question, but I tried to position it and prime the pump a little bit. A common concern I hear is that people with your experience, Now, it presumes you know that market, you know that candidate, you know that could be a potential hot button, and you're often running with a conversation then. If it's not the right pain point, then get the prospect to tell you what could be, okay? Here's another tip. If they say, I'm really happy where I am, and they just don't really even seem to want to offer possible pain points, try this. I'm really glad to hear that you like where you are. Hey, say, if you don't mind, just before we get off the call here, I'm curious, just one more question. What would make that level of satisfaction that you have even higher? Okay, see what I just did? Again, I'm still trying to keep that door open to keep us focused on that pain, even if they tell me that they don't have any pain. Okay? I'm still trying to be sure that what I'm doing, and I've done due diligence, and I've done everything I can to get us into that conversation. Well, you get the point. Continue with the great pain questions to help you understand what could drive a person to make a change. Now, so remember, questioning and listening, two sides to the same coin, a key foundational sales skill. Keep your situation fact questions to a minimum and I can't tell you which ones are the most important, but just you'll know what they are. Do your homework in advance. But boy, kick up the game on these problem pain questions. If you haven't thought of some good ones, then maybe network with some of your friends, come up with some great ones. And again, we spend quite a bit of time on that in the training because this is the heart and soul of your conversation is the pain. No pain, no change. And if you're not adept at helping a person think through what might be possible pain points, then you're just coming back to the place where you're just a commodity. You sound like everybody else. You're just that guy on the front slide hawking something that because you're getting a commission off of filling that job posting or whatever it is. Now, interestingly enough, I'm just going to share a little something I was reading the other day too. That the old style of sales was the process was all about the seller, okay, the seller's milestones. And in recruiting, we still see that. How did you screen the candidate? Did you receive the resume? Did you send it to the hiring manager? Those are seller-focused milestones. Then it shifted over to the buyer, and the buyer-focused milestones were about the buyer's decision-making process. So we kind of tracked what kind of decision-making process, who's involved in that process, have we touched them all? But interestingly enough, there's a third click of gears, and the most recent one, and I just wrote about this on my blog, is that now they say that the most successful salespeople are the best problem solvers, the best problem solvers. So it's not just about even having a cool selling process or a cool, buying process. It's can you understand the problems that person may be experiencing, and can you position yourself as a solution to those problems? Okay, you get the idea. Now, let's look at the next skill, managing objections. Sooner or later, whether we like it or not, we're going to get resistance or pushback. And when that happens, the first thing we say is just be ready. Just be ready. The best defense is a great offense. So I say understand, first of all, that you're probably going to encounter some resistance and expect it. And practice your responses. Now, we're going to give you some generic tips here for how to kind of frame up a great conversation when objections are involved. But in general then, and we have a model that we use in training that's a little bit more complex, but this one here is pretty general. Use your great questioning and listening skills. So managing any objection begins with, can you question and listen before you start shooting off every reason why that person's wrong and you're right? The second thing is, never, never, never deal with salary in isolation. We're going to show you that in a moment. That is, if the only pain point you have is you think that they want money, then you are instantly doomed to get into a discounting game. At least in sales you are. And I imagine in recruiting you're going to end up shuttling back and forth between your client or your hiring manager wondering if we can squeeze out a few more nickels to get this rock star candidate. So don't deal with salary in isolation. You've got to get it on a bucket list, and we'll show you how to do that in a moment. And the other thing is just remain calm. Sometimes it's even helpful and disarming to agree, especially if you have a candidate or prospect or hiring manager that might be a little disgruntled. It would sound something like this. I can appreciate that you're upset right now. I'd like to help. Say, I just let them know that I heard them. If nothing else, sometimes practicing just that skill is going to move you through that initial arm wrestle to a place where, you actually can probably have a fairly calm and decent conversation with someone. So use your great questioning and listening skills. Never deal with salary in isolation, and remain calm. Even try agreeing. So we're going to give you one technique here. This is called the turnaround question. The turnaround question is a cool little technique. Maybe some of you have used it, especially if you don't want to give somebody a direct answer, particularly early on a call. And in recruiting, we've heard so often that people just they want to just get off the call or have the salary or whatever. So Dinah and I are going to role play this just for a second to give you a feel for it. And I'll bet if we could see you, there might be a few head nods here because hopefully this is going to sound familiar to some of you. But the point is, as we're doing this, please listen. I should stay calm. Hard for me to do. I should acknowledge, and I should question. So this is the turnaround question. Use it when you don't want to give a direct answer, at least now. So I've got Dinah on the phone here. She's my victim. She's my prospect. So Dinah, I know you've probably seen some of our new offices in your area.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of signs down the road there. I think they're even building one a couple blocks from my office here.
Indeed they are. Well, let me tell you, let's just cut to the chase, Donna. What does that mean for you? It means growth opportunities. We are in a growth mode. We're hiring like mad, and we have some great opportunities that I'd like to chat with you about that could be a super fit for you.
Well, yeah, Nancy, I appreciate that, but I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. I just really would need to know, what is the salary for these great positions that you're talking about?
Oh, sure. I appreciate that. That's an important consideration. Donna, I need to let you know that aside from the fact that our salaries are real competitive, I just need to be honest with you that they do depend often on a lot of factors, including your experience. So here's what I'd like to do. With your permission, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a few questions first, just to get a feel for your background, your interests, and then we can cycle back and answer your question about salary, but I don't want to do that too soon. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds okay.
All right, good. Okay, see what we just did? I stayed calm, hopefully. I acknowledged the fact that I need to answer that question, but I turned it around. I am going to ask her some questions. I do not want to answer the salary question right now because, frankly, I haven't done my work. I don't have any pain points. I don't know what's important to Dinah. I have no context. Right now, salary's in isolation, okay? So just one watch out there. If you get pushed, and you probably find that this happens often, just try a little turnaround question. Stay calm, respect their wish, tell them you're going to answer their question, but get back in control of that call with a little turnaround question. Now, we're going to do it again because sometimes people aren't as nice as Dinah. And let's try the if question. So here's another little technique that you can try. If questions can be used in lots of scenarios, but we particularly like the if question with salary objections. Now, we're going to role play the same little scenario, and I want you to hear what I do with an if question, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So, Dinah, we've got lots of clinics going up in your area. I'm wondering if you might have even seen some of those.
Yeah, I noticed the construction down the street.
Yeah, well, listen, what that means for you are some incredible opportunities. We are in growth mode, and I'm telling you, for the right person, there are some unbelievable opportunities right now. And I'd like to chat with you about maybe some of your goals and see if we might find a great fit for you.
Well, what kind of salaries are these new opportunities offering?
Right. Well, aside from saying our salaries are really competitive, what I'd like to do, though, because they do depend on a lot of factors, I'd like to, if you don't mind, just spend a few moments asking you a few questions to get a better feel for what you're looking for and what's important to you in your experience, and then let's cycle back and let's try to answer that question a little bit more directly. Would that work for you?
Well, yeah, I know you're really busy, Nancy, and I'm busy, and I don't want to waste either of our time today. So can you not just tell me whatever the salary ranges would be looking at for these positions?
Right. I appreciate it. So it sounds like what I'm hearing is salary is pretty important to you.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So let's do this. If just for a moment, Dinah, we could take salary. If just for a moment, let's put it on a shelf. Let's just bracket it off. What I'd like to do is see if we can identify, I'm just curious to know, are there other factors that are going to be key in your decision-making process as you think about a new position? Again, if salary were off the table, we're just going to put it aside for a moment. Are there other factors that are going to be important to you?
Yeah, I work with a great team here in my existing position, and working with a good team is extremely important to me. I like to know that the people I work with have my back, and we're gonna take care of each other. So a good team's important to me.
Sure. Okay, we'll cut it there. So you get the point. Sometimes the turnaround may not work right away. If that doesn't work and they're pressuring you, then try an if question. Again, it's a respectful way to let them know that you're still going to address that question. But if we could just put the salary on a shelf for a moment, what you want to do is get back in control with a conversation that gets you back asking the key pain questions that you need to know so you can get salary out of isolation and into a bucket list. Now, for example, I just found out that, Dinah's going to share that, she wants to be part of a great team. Well, we would talk about that. And I would probably continue by asking her what else is important. See, what else is important? What I want to do is get that huge bucket list. I never want to have myself hanging out there with just salary. And by the way, kind of both of us reinforcing the fact that, maybe this is all about salary. Well, it's not. It's not. Unless you have the luxury of always having the top dollar, then at some point you're probably going to have to deal with salary objections. Okay? So the turnaround question is one way to keep you in control, but again, you can't turn it around without having a little list of great questions that are your go-to questions to help you understand what else is important to this person. That's where you have to go real fast with that turnaround question, or they're going to lose patience with you. And then again, if you've got someone who's real pushy and just like, yeah, just give me, cut the games here, Nancy. You sound like a cheesy salesperson here. Just give me the number. Then again, respect that and try one more time with an if question. Okay, I hear that. If we could just put salary aside for a moment, I'm just curious, what are the other factors that are going to be important to you? So, couple different strategies for you to help you managing and navigating those objections. Now, before we move on from objections, though, I really want to emphasize something that we do a lot in the training is that you have to practice these. I mean, there's no way that you're going to sound polished and professional and on top of your game if you haven't practiced any of these. You can read about a turnaround question all day long. You can listen to Nancy yak about a turnaround question. You can even hear us role play one. But you have to try them. You have to do it. You have to do it over and over so that you're comfortable enough to get caught off guard in the first 30 seconds of that phone call with show me the money. As soon as that happens, you have to be ready with, I hate to say script, because I know that gets a lot of recruiters a little bit riled up, and we're not advocating necessarily a script here. What we're advocating is being prepared. What we're advocating is having a plan, having a structure, knowing where to go if you get that objection. Not just fumbling and mumbling and thinking, oh boy, here we go, I've got to run and see if I can get more money for this rock star. It's funny, when I was talking to a recruiter the other day, I said, if you check it out, look at all the people who are paid top dollar in their profession, athletes, actors. What do? They practice, they practice, they practice. My gosh, we're starting football season, and what's the highest paid person on the entire planet doing? He's throwing a football on the sideline. You think he would know how to throw a football? He's being paid to throw a football, but he knows better. He knows better because he knows when he gets in that game, he can't miss. That's why he's practicing. So I would say, why are we different? Why do we think that we can wing it or never have to throw a football on the sideline and somehow nail the objection as soon as we get it on the call? I can't stress enough how important that is. So again, we're trying to build on these. You've got to have great pain questions. You've got to be listening to your candidates and prospects because, in a sense, it's a little bit like improvisational theater. You can't totally script it because you go off of what they say, but you have to have some kind of roadmap. Your roadmap is that buying process in your head. Get the pain points. Understand what's important to that other person. I don't care if it's a passive candidate or an active person. It's all going to be the same. You've got to understand what's important to them, align your solution with what's important to them, and practice in advance so when it comes to the place where, oh my gosh, I've got pushback, you're not at a total loss. You're prepared. And then here's a couple of little techniques for you, folks. So as you can tell, I get pretty excited about that, but it's really important to be sure that you've practiced and you don't find yourself botching the opportunity that you have to manage an objection like a pro. Now, the next skill that we found, and again, this is based on the research that we've done, is called gaining commitment. So we've walked through questioning and listening, two sides to the same coin, looked at managing resistance on the call, and then the other thing is gaining commitment. Now, this is kind of odd because in a way, gaining commitment is sort of like the outcome. In other words, if you're asking great questions and if you're listening and if you're managing objections like a pro, along the way, you're getting commitment. Click, 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 click. You're getting commitment. At the same time, we want to give you some other things that are going to be helpful for you as you try to ensure that you're not making assumptions. Here's the whole key. Please, my friends, resist the temptation to make assumptions about commitment. How about some due diligence here? We'll give you some ideas. Be sure that you've identified the decision-making criteria. Okay? Do you know what's important to the candidates? Can you make a list, and are you making a list of the pain points, whether it's growth or flexible schedule, location, culture, whatever? The point is, as a recruiter, you've got to be able to ask questions that help you develop that list of pain points, also known as the customer decision-making criteria. Okay? Second, be sure that you're aligning those pain points with the position. Let them know that what they're going to get is a match for what they're looking for, and be explicit about that. Be bold about that. Don't be shy about telling them. Remember, they're going to make their decision based on the extent to which your company, your position, is a match for their pain points. And don't be shy about it, and don't leave that to an assumption. Here's what you're going to get. Here's what I heard that you're looking for. Here's what you're going to get. Here's what I heard you're looking for. Here's what you're going to get. Okay? Now, commitment depends on them being able to say yes to one key question. Does this position, or does this opportunity, or does this career move solve the problem I'm trying to fix? In other words, am I going to receive the things I'm looking for? Whether it's growth or flexible schedule or company culture, whatever it is, people want to know that. They're not going to commit when they don't know. So the other thing is listen, clarify, and respond. There's it is again. The key word is listen. Get as much information as you can before you respond. Let me just give you a quick example. And we've heard this on calls. Sometimes prospects or candidates want to learn about the benefit package that a company has before they make a decision. And we even coach recruiters to say, don't just start spouting all the wonderful things about the benefit package. For heaven's sakes, don't assume because you have everything that you offer, the company's won awards for its benefit package, that you've met their needs and you have their commitment. Again, listen, clarify, and respond. So that might sound something like this. Hey, we have a very comprehensive benefit package. At the same time, I don't want to waste your time talking about a bunch of features that may not be interesting to you or important as you make your decision. I'm curious, are there some in particular, are there some specific benefits in particular that are going to be most critical for you as you make the decision? See? Same thing if they just say to you, by the way, oh, just send me the information. Yeah, I've heard about your company. Send me the information. Try the same technique. Clarify and respond by doing this. Oh, I'd be happy to. In fact, we've got quite a bit of information to send out about our company, about the position. And so that I don't overload your email box and tilt the whole thing, let me just ask, is there something in particular that would be most interesting to you that I can pull and be sure just to send you what's important to you? See what I did? I didn't even take the bait responding to a general question of sending, yeah, fine, send me the information. Listen, clarify, and respond. And lo and behold, you might find out that when you ask them what's important in the benefit package, they want pet insurance or something. Well, my goodness, we have pet insurance, and now you can talk about that. You don't know, though, until you've asked. Again, their commitment depends on them getting what they're looking for, and don't assume, first of all, that you know what they're looking for, and don't assume that you're even listening appropriately with the right level of detail to understand what they're saying. So, directly address their concerns or questions. Same thing, be sure that you learn what concerns they have, and don't be afraid to ask if they have questions or concerns throughout the call. I mean, sometimes people feel a little bit nervous about doing that, but honestly, I would rather know early on the call if someone's not with me than wait till the end and have made some assumptions about commitment that are frankly just false. And if you can't answer a question, be sure to have a concrete plan, how that question is going to be answered, including a timeline. And just be careful about simply saying, well, oh yeah, let me send you some information about that, and assuming that receiving information equals commitment, because I'm telling you it doesn't. As soon as you're done with that call, who knows what's going to happen to that prospect or candidate. So directly address their concerns or questions. Once in a while on a call in sales, if we felt like there was an objection or a concern that wasn't being stated, this is a little bit more of an advanced skill, but sometimes it's really one that you have to pull out, is you almost bring it up as a concern. It would sound something like this. So you have a good conversation. We're assuming you've developed some rapport, you got a conversation going, At some point, you're waiting for them to challenge you, and they haven't. So you could say something like, you know, we've talked about a lot of things on the call today. I'm just curious, one thing that I might be concerned about if I were you, we're just ensuring that those growth opportunities are there. I'm curious, is that a concern that you have? Say, what I did, I tried to bait it just a little bit. And again, you've got to be really careful with that. But if you're sensing that on your call you may not have commitment around something, go back and just try it. You know, if I were you, I might have some questions. I'm just curious. Do you still have some around that? It almost gives permission to say, actually, you know, I do. I've got a couple questions, and I just wanted to be sure it was okay to ask them. Okay? So again, sometimes you want to be a little careful because you don't want to suddenly start inviting objections, but it's a good way to test for commitment and be sure that you've picked off the things that you've got to pick off without making way too many assumptions. That's what's going to kill you. Gaining commitment is all about making sure that you're not making assumptions. And then confirm, like I said. We hear so often on candidate screens that we go from pain points to moving a candidate to a hiring manager, and I'm almost shaking my head saying to myself, well, I don't think the candidate was ever asked if they'd like to move forward. In our view, it's a key part of gaining commitment to just say, are you in? Is this something that you're interested in? Just put it out there. Hey, we've talked a lot. Dinah, you sound super excited. I can tell you're coming out of your chair. At the same time, I'm just curious, is this still a position you'd like to move forward with? Again, I'm not assuming that because we're both in violent agreement that this thing is moving on. I'm going to be very careful and ask that question. It's just a quick question, but sometimes it makes a difference between making an incorrect assumption and being sure that you've done due diligence. So during the call, hey, does that answer your question? What other questions do you have? Try those little closes. Don't be shy about asking, how's that sound so far? Have I left out anything else that's important as you think about making the decision? Keep turning it back and getting that confirmation. And again, if there's things that have been left out, we're off and running. Let's go back and let's talk about them. Don't assume. So often we hear on these recruiter calls major mistakes with a simple skill that can be corrected called don't assume. Please don't assume. So let's take a look now. What we have here are what we would call, again, based on the research that we've done, these successful selling process. Remember, if you don't have a great process, get one. And if you want, try this one because it works pretty well. It's very simple. Understand in your mind, this is how that person's going to make a decision. Their needs need to be explicit. Then they need to understand that somebody is going to provide what I need, and then they're going to make their decision. As a recruiter, all you have to do is be sure you're identifying and clarifying those needs and have those great pain questions. Keep those situation fact questions to a minimum. Thank you very much. And be sure that you are able to align and sell back and manage objections. And if you haven't got some good objection techniques in your toolkit, try a turnaround question or an if question. And by the way, practicing is so key. And I just saw a question pop up here about practicing. If you want to kick up your game, first of all, try some friends who are going to be friendly and, maybe be a little gentle as you bump along in your first few attempts. And tell them what you're doing. And then maybe as you kick up your game, try getting someone who's going to give you a little bit more pushback. So it's almost like practicing a skill for the first time. Practice it in a safe environment, maybe with someone who can help you and be really affirming and reassuring, and then kind of keep moving to different levels of difficulty. And maybe if you were in a work group, try it with one another in your work group. Grab some other recruiters and say, hey, beat me up a little bit. Tell me how you would respond if I did this to you. And that'll give you a chance. Not only are you getting good feedback, but the best thing in the process is you're practicing those tracks. That's what's key. You're practicing those tracks. Okay? So again, questioning and listening, managing objections, and gaining commitment. I feel like we should be marching along saying questioning, listening, managing, just like we're off to see the wizard here. So the point is, those are your foundational sales skills. A successful process, they're mirror images of one another. You're not in total transmit. You're not a fact-finding fool. You've got your eyes shut. You're in the Zen position. You're centered. And what you're saying is, I am listening. I am fully present to you. So don't forget, too, that that's that most important perspective is the prospect or candidate's perspective. They're the ones that are going to make that decision, and your go-to skills are questioning, listening, managing objections, and gaining commitment. We like to say, it's your job, my friends, to sell the hole, not the shovel. So there's lots of shovels out there. People can buy shovels anywhere, but only you know how to effectively, powerfully, persuasively help them understand that that hole is a problem. And you are in a unique position to help them. And by the way, yeah, you do sell shovels, but that's not what you lead with. Now, I want to close by, again, thanking everyone. This is a lot of information. I recognize that, and I'm sure we've got some questions that have come in. So I'm going to take a quick break here while Dinah, maybe you can look at some of the questions we've got. We'll do these together. We'll do our best to try and answer some of the questions that have come through. Although I heard a person say once, it shouldn't be question and answer. It should be question and response, because I'm not so sure we always have the answers, but we'll have a response. So if that sounds fair. Dinah, what do you see that we've got that we might be able to respond to?
Sure. One of the questions is, I have heard that open-ended questions are better than closed-ended questions. What do you think? And I think at first it seems to make sense that open-ended questions are better than closed-ended questions. That's what we've all probably learned throughout the years. But interesting enough, there's a lot of research that's shown that there's really no correlation between sales success and open and closed-ended questions. But there's a really huge, strong correlation between a sales success and asking pain questions. So have those good pain questions in your army and your list of questions that you ask. If you think about it, a properly placed closed-ended question could be very, very powerful when you're talking with a potential candidate, especially if you're at the point where you're testing for commitment. To ask then a closed-ended question. On the other hand, if you are looking at a properly placed or a poorly placed, maybe ill-timed, open-ended questions, really out of sequence in the call, it's going to add absolutely nothing to your call. So I think it's a balance between the two.
Yeah, good, thanks. Great question. Then I'll let you look at some. I'll see if I can grab one here too. Here's one. What does address the competition mean in the selling? Yeah, thank you for that question. I apologize. So one of the things that's important to know in gaining commitment is that, is the person looking anywhere else? Even if they've applied as a candidate, doesn't mean that you're the only game in town. So I would say be sure that you have some key questions that work for you in helping you understand a little bit about their job search. And we've done a few, I'll give you a couple examples. First of all, I like to use a permission base. Now don't ask this right away in your screen or in your working with your passive candidate. Bury it down in the call a little bit. Once you've got some rapport, you understand a little bit what's important to the person, then it would be natural to ask what I would call a permission-based question. It would sound something like this. I'm curious, you've got a great background, and I know you've got some options. I'm curious, would you mind sharing, are you looking anywhere else? Say, would you mind sharing, are you looking anywhere else? So I've just asked their permission, and they'll say yes or no. By the way, on the recruiter calls we've heard, I'm looking at Dinah, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say it's none of your business.
I haven't.
So, I mean, it's not a scary question for most people. So, do you mind if I ask a few questions, are you looking anywhere else? And if they say, then you might ask them, if it's a similar position, you might ask them how far they are in the process. Okay? Now, all good information, especially if you got a hiring manager who doesn't know that they're looking somewhere else. And by the way, now you can run and tell them they got an interview somewhere else next week. or whatever it is. But it's really a good way. You can't go too far because sometimes it feels like you're crossing a line with them. But just initially, hey, you looking anywhere else? Curious, it is a similar position. You know, how far are you in the process? And then once in a while, if you really want to get some sense of kind of validating what you've heard on the call, here's one that you can try. I love this question. I'm just curious to know, let's just say hypothetically that you have 2 offers next week, one from us and one from our competitor. I'm curious to know, how are you going to make that decision? Now, when you ask that, what you're doing is, in a way, you're kind of cross-validating what you've heard on that call. Now, they should give you the same criteria, the same pain points you heard on that call. If you hear something different, then I'm going to suggest that you need to go back and do some revisiting of some things because you're not hearing the same thing. Now, wait a minute. I just heard that you're going to make your decision on salary, but we just spent 45 minutes talking about how excited you are about the growth opportunities, for example. So you have to be careful. Beyond that, there's not much else. You have to be a little bit careful because you can cross a boundary there. But just get enough so that you got a sense. Are they looking, yes or no? How far are they? How serious are they? And you're off and running. So I hope that answers the question about the competition. Diana, have you got another one? I know I don't want to run out of time, but another question maybe?
Yeah, there's a couple here that go kind of hand in hand. One of them is how many pain questions should you ask? And then there's another one, I think related to recommend a good opening pain question. I'll just answer the first part, is how many pain questions. There's no magic number, as I'm sure we all know. I think you have to ask as many as you need to be sure you have a very solid understanding of what is important to that candidate.
Yeah, yeah. And again, an opening pain question, it almost comes down to, like I said, it's almost like improvisational theater. You sort of have to get a feel for how your conversation's going and what kind of question that person might be open to. Some people are a little bit more matter-of-fact, a little bit more, to the point, and you could be a little bit more blunt and just kind of cut to the chase. I'm curious to know what's going to be important to you as you think about a new position. What's number one on your list? And for others, maybe you back into it. Hey, I've heard lots of things you've talked about on the call, and it sounds like you're excited about a number of things. Let's go back and visit those, and I want to get a feel from you, in your words, what each one of these means to you. Let's start with growth. I mean, you talked about, so see what I'm saying? It's almost like improvisational theater. You have to kind of dance with that person a little bit and be sure that your pain questions are aligned, there's that word again, with a little bit with their personality and also a little bit with how that call is going. But you always want to lead with something where, and you're going to have to stab in the dark a little bit because you don't know that person too much until you've been on the call a little bit. But what you do know is your market. What you do know is, are you recruiting for technical people or feel-good people, touchy-feely people? Geographically, it makes a difference sometimes. So you probably should already have queued up a pain question or two that you know have been very successful in getting people to spill pain pretty fast. So I hope that's helpful in answering the question. So I don't want to run over our time here. I know that we've got. Oh, we have one other. The presenters mentioned additional training they provide. Yes, thank you for that question. Please feel free to hop on our website there. We're going to be putting out some new training this fall that will be all online training, instructor-led like we did today, but diving into these skills, all I can say now is hop on the website, check it out, and please feel free. Sign up for our blog, sign up for our newsletter, and that way you'll be plugged in to know that when the time is right for you, you can plug into the training that's going to make most sense to take you to the next level. So once again, what we like to say is to your success.
Well, thank you guys so much. I'd love to take more questions, but we are at the top of the hour. Just a quick reminder that by the end of the day tomorrow, you will receive an email from us that will include today's webinar slides, recording, and information containing HRCI credits. This information will also be available at ere.net. A big thanks to Nancy and Dinah for sharing with our audience today, and another huge thank you to Jobvite for sponsoring today's webinar. Thanks, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
And ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude your conference call for today. We thank you for your participation and ask that you please disconnect your lines.